You're listening to the Energy is Love podcast.
Let's do it.
Phone silent.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's do it. Record. I'm ready.
What is your biggest issue? No, not your biggest issue facing you right now.
Whoa.
Sorry.
Here we go. Here we
Get a little
go.
excited right off the bat. No, I was going to open the episode talking about how I was sick. And now Stephanie's not sick. She doesn't feel quite well.
Doing good. I'm doing good.
You are
I've
doing
got all
well.
the T's in me. I've got the oscillum. I don't think that's what it's actually called, but the oscillum
Mm-hmm.
by Bjorn, I think.
Maybe it's Bjork. Maybe her music career ended and she started
right?
naturopath.
It's all the homeopathic stuff,
Uh-huh.
and I think that it is definitely hitting me far less severe than it hit you because I was able to hit it faster, knowing
that it was coming.
Yeah. So I'm doing good. Also,
Yeah, bear with us, right?
we sound like this, and throughout the episode, I'm going to be wiping my nose. So
I think you
hopefully-
sound great.
You can't. Okay. Yeah, I do.
Yeah, you sound really good.
Is it that sultry? And do
No.
I have that low sultry?
You
How was
definitely you
that?
don't even sound sick.
I don't.
You've got a
I don't.
little bit of
It's because I'm not sick. I just don't feel
That's right.
so good.
Definitely not sick.
I'm not sick.
Yep, definitely not sick.
I'm just a little tired.
Right, just a little
I'm
tired.
just a little tired.
So we need to touch base on last week's episode.
Yeah, we do.
That was a really hard
Woo.
episode for us to sit through.
Right.
Maybe it was a hard one for you.
It was really hard for us
to.
to participate with.
Yeah, and I honestly
Oh,
we haven't talked about it,
And we both
since-
got sick after.
I did. Funny how that works, right? We truthfully we haven't really touched base afterwards. We did a little bit, didn't we? Wasn't it the next day? So what happened? First
I'm
off,
like,
if you
we
haven't,
had a big conversation. We had a really big conversation
That's right.
after. I think we touched a few bases.
it's true. Maybe I'm just
See, he got a fever.
I've blocked everything out.
There's no fever happening for this just not feeling well person.
So go back and listen to the episode
Yeah.
if you haven't. And it's probably way not that bad. Like typically when we record an episode and it's one that we're like, oh my God, should we release this for all the reasons why we think we shouldn't? Truthfully, it's not that bad of an episode. So in our minds, that episode has like 45 minutes of dead silence.
I can't get my glasses on with the headphones. I'm sorry.
You're doing good, babe.
Okay. 45 minutes of dead silence. Here's
Yeah.
my glasses.
In our mind, that's what the episode
Oh.
is us just like sitting there, not talking, and instead just
Just being
continuing
triggered,
to be like
only
ultra
trigger.
triggered and frozen in our activated states of little kidness and just like unable to speak and continue. And it's probably not that bad.
I mean, it might be,
I didn't honestly listen to all of it when I edited it.
right?
When I went back and put it all together to be released, I kind of just skimmed the surface. I didn't even like do the cliff notes. I'm just like, oh, sounds good. Let's release that episode.
We just trusted and sent it out there for the universe.
Yeah. With the intention of following up this week
Yeah.
and talking about it. And because we don't really remember what the episode was about, I don't even remember. I guess I do remember what got the ball rolling with the triggering.
Yeah.
So do we want to get into it a little bit?
Yeah. Well, I mean, for a bit, right?
Yes. And we're not going to get triggered.
Oh, yeah, we are. No, like the parts that I want to touch on, like, I don't know that we need to replay. I mean, we totally can. Whatever comes up, comes up. But the thing that that I'm really happy about with us is that was, and the thing is it wasn't even a tense thing. It wasn't even like, that wasn't a difficult conversation, but it triggered our little kid wounds. So this conversation went really, really challenging.
Mhm.
And like for us, it was hard.
Yeah.
It brought up stuff from the past. It brought up all these wounds. And so we're sitting in it while trying to figure out how to like
Continue to do the
navigate that,
podcast.
continue the podcast. And I was struggling and you were struggling. It was, so that's just like the awareness of how like shadows and triggers, they come back up. So sometimes it's a significant event and it's a big deal. And you're like, here we are, like what just happened? And then sometimes it's a small thing that is just enough to be like, poof, here we go.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what happened. So
Yeah, it was
after.
very innocuous
Yeah.
initially, where
Right?
I thought we were just having this interesting conversation about stuff, and then next thing I know, and it got both of us, like it
Right.
was weird. Like that's the thing. If you go back and listen to it and you're like,
You can tell us about it.
I don't understand what you guys are talking about, because you had a different experience of it. And we didn't really talk about what was triggering us. Like we didn't get into it because we were both just like super frozen in the moment. And back
We
in
were
the
an
day,
active trigger.
yeah, yeah. And back in the day, I used to push through those moments and just keep like trying to create the best podcast episode ever by making we weren't very loving to ourselves.
I was like, I was trying to do that this episode, though.
Yeah.
You're like, back in the day, I used to do this. And I'm like, last week, I was doing this.
No, but
I was trying.
we have a lot more love and compassion for who we are now. And, you know, if we're stuck in those moments, sometimes like the goal of the podcast isn't to just share with you every raw moment of our life and our experiences together, because there's certain things that are just ours.
Mm-hmm.
And there's like finding the right healthy balance between what do we express and share on the podcast, and then what do we keep to ourselves. And what we touched upon last week and the triggers that were the wounds that were opened up last week were ones that are just for us. Like it's our healing, it's our journey, it's our experience. We have a lot of trauma from our childhoods that we're working on, and we bring that to the show, but we do it with compassion and love for us. Whereas in the past, I know I didn't have that same level of compassion and love for myself.
And then how we handled it after. Like, I can only speak for myself and what I did.
Let's hear it.
Which was loving for myself. I knew, like, I was triggered. I was overwhelmed. I needed a break. I needed to self-regulate. I needed to, I needed to go in.
Mm-hmm.
And that didn't look like sitting down and having this conversation with you at that point, or going and doing anything else. I was at capacity. So I went, luckily I had the space to do it. And I went in the room, I shut the door, and I just gave myself hours of letting myself regulate and soothe and doing my techniques, what I needed from me. Because I was, oh my gosh, it was so much. But the beautiful thing about that is I have been practicing this a lot. We've got years of working with this. That wasn't something that I would just have naturally done before. That was practice, consistency, continuing to show up for myself, continuing to be willing to look at the hard things. That it wasn't a question of setting time aside for myself. It was a non-negotiable. I'm going to heal right now. And it doesn't mean I'm healed, I'm done. But I was taking that time for me. I was soothing myself. I was taking care of myself. I wasn't causing any more injury or harm, whether physical, emotional, mental. I was just ooh, I need to caretake right now. And there was no other option for me to do. It was just I matter and I'm going to take care of myself. And I did. I just did my thing for hours till I could start to breathe and poke my head up out of it. And you'll have to tell me your experience. But at some point you I don't know if you came in the room. I don't have clear memory on it. Or if it's when I finally ventured out into the front room or however it happened. But you asked me if physical contact was okay in that moment. You didn't just assume and come to hug me. You were in your trigger too. But you were still is physical contact okay? And I was yeah, because we had that. And so you even checked in with me. And I had that opportunity because I took all that time for myself to be yeah, I'm ready to reintegrate into the world now. And the contact felt good. And we got through the night and it was still kind of here we go. I was still very much, I was isolating, but not in a shutdown disconnect, in I had to plug back in because there was nothing left in the tanks.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next day you started the conversation with an opt-in of where we were ready to get into this. And then we spent, I don't know, a really, really good amount of time.
Yeah, a few hours.
Yeah, with this where we practice hearing the other person. Like we each had our own time to like speak, and then we were reflecting back, clearing confusions, and each person got to, from my perspective, right? You might be like, this is a different experience for me. From my perspective, we got to hear each other and then clarify. And if there were things that were like misinterpreted or misunderstood, because I know there was a big part of some things where you heard something different than what I was saying. And I was able to clarify that and be like, no, this is actually, and then be accountable for really realizing. I think one of the things I said at that point is like, this vocabulary is new to me and I'm still practicing it. And like, it's a work in progress. And I'm sorry that this is how it came out, or it made you feel this way. And I'm working on that, because the impression that you got was so not what I was trying to communicate with you. And it was okay, but it was also like this gut punch. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad you clarified, because that's not what I'm saying. And I felt like we really just like, it took work and it took time, and you and I committed to each other and to ourselves that time. And then, woof, we worked through it. And something that took a couple hours, as were something before that we would, not only have been like spiraling out forever on, but not talking about and shoving down to come up another time and keep building. So I think we did a good job being as triggered as we was from my perspective.
I agree.
And I might just only be remembering the positive things too. You might be, like I said, your perspective might be a little different.
Without going too far into your trigger, like obviously within the context of what you feel comfortable sharing, can you explain or express some of what was being triggered for you? Some of the stuff that, you don't have like as much as you want to go
I don't know
into
that I really need to. I don't know that I want to do that right now.
Okay.
I'm really interested in, it's like what I just like expressed. We haven't came and told each other's perspective and what we did individually through that. And so I'm actually really, really curious if you're able to share what you did when I was taking care of myself. What was your space like? What did you do for yourself? And what was your experience when we were talking?
Okay. I will do my best.
Yeah.
While you were talking, I was trying to listen. I did a really good job of listening.
Good job.
And I was also trying to like remember what happened. I was trying to go back in time and put myself back into that position. Like, I mean, here we are sitting in the same spots, right? The same seats and recording the podcast and everything. And I'm trying to remember exactly what sparked everything for me. And I'm so scared to talk, Steph, now, because I'm afraid that I'm going to remember something wrong, or I'm going to say something that didn't happen from like your perspective, or I'm going to talk about something that like triggers and upsets you. And truthfully, that's probably at the core of what this all was for me. Go ahead.
I was like, it totally is. Like, that was a big thing of you not feeling like you could speak these things, that you couldn't like say something that you wanted done or say a need that you have, and just feeling, so you're like sitting here getting ready to talk and being like, no, like that totally fits.
Yeah. It's a really big wound where like I have all sorts of, where am I going? I'm getting too frozen again. I'm getting too scared. You asked me a question. What was my experience?
Yeah. I'm really interested in your perspective, and it's okay if it doesn't match mine.
So while we were recording, we did a good job of like acknowledging and recognizing, okay, we're both super triggered right now. And like we were having a difficult time continuing the conversation, not wanting to make it worse for either of us, right? Not wanting like love and respect for the parts of us that were triggered, and then also love and respect for each other. And like we were trying to do the best that we could.
Mm-hmm.
So we muscled through the podcast and wrapped up the episode. And then we got done. And I was like doing the best that I could to hold two things. I was trying to like recognize, okay, we just did a really healthy thing in regards to how we're handling the situation. But like you immediately left, like you immediately got up and went and did what you just explained that you just did.
Mm-hmm.
And what I had to do, and not because of you, like my experience at that point was like all of this massive work to self-regulate my own emotional state.
Yeah.
Because a big part of what I was, like a big part of the narrative that was running through my head was that I had done something wrong, that I had hurt your feelings, that by me speaking and bringing up, and like what I was trying to articulate throughout the episode was like basically it was like I fucked up and I hurt you, and I had to like do everything I could to not get swallowed up by that.
Mm-hmm.
And instead just stay in the space of like like that, you guys, that was good, you guys did a good job, like there's nothing wrong with getting triggered. And like not allowing you, like I gave you the on, like, but like sitting outside of the room while you're in the room doing whatever it was that you were doing. Because in my mind, I don't know what you're doing.
Right?
I mean, I have a higher perspective, like my higher consciousness is like, oh, she's totally doing what she needs to do. Like this is awesome. Look at how she's doing a wonderful job of taking that space and that time for herself. Right? And so I was very, very like proud of you, and I was very much in support of it. And I wanted to be like respectful of that, right? And in order to do that, that meant that I had to give you that space.
Uh-huh.
So I don't do a very good job of that, right? When it comes to like our codependency issues, if I am, because we've talked about this on the podcast before, I think, where we've got like, what am I? I'm, what are we going to
go over attachment styles right now?
No, just in the context of what I'm saying right now. I'm avoidant.
Anxious.
I'm anxious avoidant.
You, sweetheart,
I present as avoidant.
You present as
but
avoidant,
secretly
and
I'm anxious.
Secretly, you're anxious,
Yeah.
and you, while you're presenting, like we did not have. It's actually, without going off into attachment styles, it's oh my gosh, the actual thing is eluding me right now, and it's such.
Do I have an eluding attachment style?
You do. No, the freaking name of what it's actually called. Fearful avoidant? Is it the fearful avoidant?
Maybe. It's not the point of it.
No, it's not. But now I'm focused on that. I'm like, I have to get it right.
So basically, that was super activated in me, right?
Yeah.
Because in order for me to feel safe and not healthily, right? Not in the context and space of like in a healthy way, but in the ways that I have felt safe in the past, especially as a child, is to be like anxiously attached to the person that I love, right? And if that person is like dysregulated or upset in any way, then suddenly my world is chaos. And the only way that I can find safety and security is by like making sure that that person is happy with me, or that that person loves me still, by fixing whatever it is that I did wrong. So I fought that like all day long, and you stayed in the room all day.
I know. I didn't even have water.
Yeah.
I was just like.
You were just like, I'm going to do this self-care. And I'm like, okay. After like maybe a half hour or an hour, there was a certain amount of time that passed where I realized she ain't coming out. And I can't go in and be like, hey, I'm just checking on you.
No.
Are you okay?
You're definitely not.
Like, oh, I know you're taking your space. I just want to make sure, is there anything that you, and I had to fight those urges.
You did so good.
Because it was super strong in me, babe. And it was so much anxiety that I was experiencing, because I was fighting against this thing that I did anything wrong. Like there was a part of me that was like, this just happened. It's not a big deal. You can move through this experience in this really healthy way. And then there was another part of me that was like, the world is end. It's Chicken Little, like like it's over. she's in there contemplating how she's leaving you. Everything is a nightmare right now. You need to go in there and fix it. You fucked up. You don't even know how badly you fucked up, but you fucked up. You need to go solve this problem right now. Otherwise. And then like in my head, I'm just like, no, you don't need to do that. You need to just stay out here and fully recognize that this is like the healthy adult versions of yourselves taking care of yourselves right now in these moments, which is healthy. And if she needs something from you, she will ask. And then like vice versa. If I need something from you, I will ask. But what I don't need to do is suddenly come in and try to caretake you, because underneath the caretaking, I'm just trying to like ease this massive ball of anxiety. So after about an hour of fighting and resisting and fighting and resisting and fighting and resisting, I finally just like gave in and I watched a movie. So like one of my, whether you want to label it healthy or unhealthy person out there listening, I label it both depending upon the day. Like I zone out and tune out and disconnect and disassociate by watching movies or TV. Super common, I'm sure, right? Everybody does it in some capacity. But sometimes it's like a very self-soothing act. And there's reasons behind that, like it's how I grew up and all sorts of different things. Like I said, there's sometimes a quote unquote unhealthy coping mechanism is okay.
Sometimes it is the healthy choice, right?
And so like for me that day, just being able to like zone out and watch a show, it allowed my brain to kind of decompress and relax, and my nervous system started to relax and calm down. So I was no longer in that like super activated place where I felt like I needed to come engage with you in order to dissipate all of that energy. So I started to relax and I just watched a show. I don't remember what I watched. It was I usually will go find something that I've seen before, something that I know makes me feel a certain way. Mm-hmm. And so I just watched something and zoned out. And then I had signed up for a breathwork class. Some guy was leading a breathwork for emotional release on that day, which was like perfect timing, where I got to go out into our little sunroom patio and go through this breathwork. And that was an amazing release. And then I went to, did I go to jiu-jitsu that night? Did I go to class? What did I go do that night?
I think you did. And
I did, huh? It was on a Thursday. Yeah. So I went and, did some healthy exercising and jiu-jitsu rolling and I went by myself because obviously you weren't going.
I wasn't going.
And
I was cocooning.
So all of those things, like I was able to kind of like hold down the fort of chaos in this like adult healthy way of supporting like this inner child part of myself that was super scared and activated. And then I very much wanted to reconnect. I very much wanted to like come back because I knew so much had come up. Yeah. And I honestly didn't have a real clear idea of what was triggering you, as how much.
It was my trigger.
I know.
Right.
And like I didn't really know. I could just tell, like, when we were recording the episode, right? It was obvious, but I didn't know what it was. So I needed.
You were also very triggered.
I was very triggered.
So it's like hyper focusing on figuring out how to dissolve the trigger that's external. Mm-hmm. Became like.
Yes, and then also in doing so, I'm avoiding the actual, the wound inside of me that got triggered. So it was a beautiful experience from all these kind of different perspectives. Where like the timing of me being able to have some sort of like, guided breath work experience for emotional release on the same day where I need this big emotional release was amazing. Having like all the stars aligned for us to go through this massive triggering event in a healthy way. And then having the time and the space the following day to be able to devote to processing it with each other and going through it with each other was really, really cool.
Yeah, it was.
And I'm really grateful for it.
Good job.
Good job on your part.
We did so good.
Right?
I'm going to high five. I'll wait for your cards.
We did really good.
We did.
Yeah, look at us.
Right?
High level relationshiping, like actively in the moment. Right.
It doesn't always, Doesn't mean triggers don't happen. Doesn't mean you don't get affected and respond maybe ways you don't choose in the moment. It's just how you deal with them.
Yeah, it was really hard.
It was really hard. Like, you're yawning.
No, we just got
just
done.
Which are like, how long has this podcast been? Are we done?
A short episode where we just touch base
We
and
did
then move on.
We did the things. Now we're going to go to sleep.
It was a lot.
See y'all on Tuesday.
It was definitely a lot.
Yeah.
That subconscious, that's the other thing that I think we recognized was how subconscious everything was.
Yeah.
These weren't surface level triggers. Like, these aren't ones that we would put on it. Like, we've got some that we could list, right?
Right.
Like, these are my triggers. We know when this stuff comes up, then it's going to cause me to feel X, Y, and Z. This was not one of those.
This was where'd you come from?
Yeah. This was suddenly we're like walking along thinking everything's fine. And then out of nowhere, this one came and like snatched us and
Right.
like, ha ha ha. This one was out of nowhere.
Yeah.
So it was really weird to try to process it. And like, for me, I'm aware of, like, when I say I'm super aware, obviously I'm not, because it still happens all the time, but I'm becoming more and more aware of how, like, the level of not just unhealthiness that exists, but like how ingrained and subconscious it is in me to look to you for my own stability.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to read you something that kind of relates exactly to this.
Okay.
Let's see.
You're not alone in that, by the way.
I know.
Like,
I know that you do the same
so
thing.
much. You're not alone in that.
Yeah. So this is was a reel or something like that on Instagram. So if your partner is upset and your first instinct is to ask, are you mad at me? Or what did I do? Instead of ask, are you okay? And what are you feeling? Then you are experiencing what in this post they term emotional monitoring. Another symptom of this is if you pay extremely close attention to your partner's body language, facial expressions, replies, and tone, because you're subconsciously on guard, trying to figure out if they're mad at you. Emotional monitoring comes from a childhood where your parent or parents had unpredictable moods and or emotional outbursts. The child in you is nervous, afraid, and hypervigilant. So that's quite literally what I do in our relationship, like subconsciously.
Yeah.
99% of the time.
Right.
Where I'm continually doing all of those things, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm paying really close attention to your body language, to your facial expressions,
Yep.
how you're responding and replying, your tone, all of these things. And like, this is like the complex PTSD that they talk about, right? Where it's like you are in an activated state all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say that you and I have existed like that the majority of our life.
I still, like, I want to say, like, oh, that's not a thing. And I still, to this day, do that. And it's not just with you. I take the temperature of everybody.
Exactly.
I don't react to it in the same way. And I will disengage. But it's
a continual practice.
It's a continual practice.
Yeah.
And it is something that we can pick up the subtlest things that we also misinterpret.
Right.
Right? Because we're like, I recognize this. And I don't know, there's times we pick up the subtlest things and we're spot on. But usually when we feel like it's directed at us is where we're misinterpreting. You know, I don't know, babe. Yeah.
It's a superpower.
It really is. And it's one that I'm okay with losing the ability to do.
You know what? Like, I'm glad that you say that. And I don't think we have to lose that ability.
Turning it off. I don't know. I would like to not always be watching everything.
Hypervigilant
everything.
State. Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. We can turn it off. And I actually have experience with this.
Right?
Because there's levels of like hypervigilance that I've had to learn how to turn off.
You have. Well, here's my question, though, before you go into that, because I'm like, I see that. And I think you see that in me.
Yes.
You know, also different levels. It's not that I don't see it anymore. These hypervigilances are turned off. It's just I'm behaving differently to them. I'm reacting differently to them. I still have awareness of, but I am choosing to, not all the time, but a lot of times choosing to not participate in that, choosing to not let that, what I just caught, be like, "Ooh, we're going with this," and now steering the ship. So I see it, but I still hold my energy and don't engage with that aspect of it. I still hold my energy, but it doesn't go away. So when you're saying that of turning it off, do you like, I don't think that you're not seeing these things anymore. I think that you're just, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm just thinking, of course, this is how it is for me. So this is how it is for you, how people do that thing. So do you turn it off? Do you just miss it?
So what we're talking about, just so that like context for people that maybe don't understand what we're talking about.
Right.
Like I used to be a cop, so I have a background in law enforcement. And obviously as a police officer, you were constantly scanning your surroundings and aware of everything that was taking place in order for your safety and survival, blah, blah, blah. Okay. And we recognize, because it's been 8 years.
Something.
This is 2023, right?
I have no idea how long it's been.
So it's been 8 years.
Oh, there's a good way for me to. Yep. Okay.
Yep. You remember.
Yeah, I do.
I got fired right after we got married. So that's what she's talking about too. Anyways, we've talked all about this on the podcast before.
Heard.
And part of what the process was for me was learning how to turn that hypervigilance off, the type of hypervigilance that required me to assess for safety and my survival in every scenario you could possibly imagine. So to answer your question, I think it's both. I think there's parts of it that I've just turned off, and then there's parts of it that I still see, but I don't react to. So I'm not responding to and reacting to, and kind of like, so it's almost like, boy, I don't know, as we try to diagnose and pick this apart a little bit more, I think I probably still see a lot. See, now I'm worried that maybe I'm not reacting to it. See, there's that part of my brain that's like, you're seeing it and you're not doing anything about it. That's even worse.
Well, no, it's not.
You know,
like, cause you're like, you get the conscious decision to say, I can go to crazy town right now, but I don't. If something is seriously happening that needs a response, you react.
I think so.
You step up. You are like, you are there. You are a presence.
I do a good job of that.
You're not overreacting.
Yeah.
And not micromanaging and over controlling everything. And we're like, turns out we're just dropping the ball. No.
So this thing that we've developed from childhood, right? Because I love that they'd explained in this little post, emotional monitoring comes from a childhood where your parents, and we'll just leave it at parents, right? Because obviously for us, it was both parents. And I think for the majority of people, like if one of your parent exhibits this, then both of your parents exhibit this. Unpredictable moods and or emotional outbursts. Check and check. The child is nervous, afraid, and hypervigilant. Yeah. So yeah, because we have that childhood, then we are continually seeking, like, it's not even, like, it gets so fucked up and convoluted because when your parents are like that, and your parents are what you go to for love and safety, then you start to associate like, okay, so I go to you for love and safety now. Yeah. Right? Like this is the bizarro way that the universe works, right? Like they're in some way you represent like my parents. And I go towards you for love and safety. Like when I need somebody to not make me feel better, but like when I'm sad or when I'm happy, like you are love for me. So I go towards you because you are love. And now we have to unravel and peel back the layers of what that means. Because there's a part of that that's just healthy and normal and awesome.
There's a part of that that is like, that's the partnership that I want, is somebody like that I can go to, not somebody that is dependent. Like it's not up to you to make sure that I always feel this way, and it's your not that. That's the unhealthy thing. But to be like, I can go to you, and you can come to me. Yes, and you do, and I do, and then we also.
And then we have this other parts of ourselves that are super subconscious that are like, oh no. She doesn't love me. Right. She's upset. And you might just have gas that day or something. Right. Like when you're on your period or the days leading up to your period, like if you're cramping at all, my first thought, what did I do? I totally upset her in some way. Until you articulate that you're cramping, I'm like, okay, phew. I know it's a completely different situation.
Do you know what's funny? Like that's one reaction. And sometimes you look at me and go, "Whoo, she's close." And I'm like, what?
But that's how like ingrained and subconscious this, and healthy or unhealthy, I really would like us to remove the label from that.
Right.
I saw this other thing recently where it was like judging all the ways that you learned how to heal or not heal, but all the ways that you learned how to survive as unhealthy. Like that's a disservice to like how fucking awesome is it that you learned how to survive in that environment?
How clever, amazing, smart, resourceful, like amazing you have to be as a little bitty to figure out how to survive that world.
Exactly.
You're amazing. You didn't do anything wrong.
No, you were like problem solving at high levels.
Well, yeah, high five that.
Right.
Hang that up on the fridge. Look at you. And now we get to learn some new ways.
Exactly.
Hell yeah.
And so in the process of us learning new ways how to do this, like I think that's literally, right? We're full circle now. That's what happened last week on the podcast was that little part of ourselves. Each of us got super triggered and wounded. And like, same thing, right? It's so bizarro because when I trigger you, then what the mind fuck that is, because I'm your source of safety and love. But yeah, I'm triggered, like to have the back and forth of.
We get lots of practice with things.
I think that's your kind way of like, yeah, this motherfucker triggers me all the time.
No, I'm like, you trigger me. Yes. Yeah. I trigger you. Yes. Like we get to practice, but we are practicing. Like we're in it consciously practicing. And that is not saying that we just get it right and we're always self-aware.
Oh.
No. No.
No.
But we sure try. And then we come back to it and we hold ourselves accountable and each other accountable lovingly. And we keep trying and we keep going deeper and we keep working towards it. And we keep fucking it up. So we get so much more to work on.
Fascinating to me to feel like be at this phase in my life where I recognize, because I'm doing a lot of like really good like self-love practices, right? I'm really working a lot on trying to prioritize that aspect of my life, right? So setting aside time to do things for myself that are loving and kind and like all of these really beneficial things. And how like there is a program in my head that every time I do that, the program is you're upsetting her. You realize that she's upset at you right now. You realize that by you saying that you can't be there for her right now because you need to take this time for yourself is upsetting her and causing problems in your relationship. Like it doesn't hurt. That's a little strong. It feels like so much, like I have to go through so much inner turmoil and pain just to get to this point of where I can like, quote unquote, self-love. Like it happens at night when I'm like, baby, I gotta go to bed.
Right.
Like I'm tired. Like that's an act of self-love for me to say, I want to spend time with you and I like the time that we spend together, but I'm tired and I need to close my eyes. And for me to do that, I need the lights off. Like, here's what I require for myself in this moment. And like there's times when it upsets you, and upset is relative, right? It's not like suddenly you're so angry at me because I said, but like you're like, oh shoot, because I really like spending this time and I want to spend more time with you.
Sometimes I still wanted that.
Exactly.
And you had to say, I don't have this to give you right now.
Yeah. And like that's so hard to do.
I know,
it's so hard to counter that voice.
It is.
It's like, nope, don't do that. She's not going to love you anymore.
It's so hard.
I hate it.
You do such a good job.
Thank you.
Like it's really hard. It's really, really hard. So that shows how much you're valuing yourself and how much you are trusting yourself and allowing yourself boundaries and realizing that like you matter. You are a priority. You're not being hurtful. You're not hurting me. You're not out there being like selfish and destructive and causing me any pain. You're saying, I need some sleep. It's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's weird. It's a weird thing to be navigating, especially like as adults, right?
Right.
Like that's the whole thing that we just all need to realize. You're not an adult.
Right.
Like just get
Quit
over
pretending.
it.
I mean, yeah, you got bills and
you're not an adult.
You have all these responsibilities also.
Right. You're just not. You're a really mature kid.
You're not even that. You just
like, let's all stop thinking that eventually we're just not adults.
'Cause I'm an adult.
Right? It's a broken
We're all
system
playing
where
dress up.
yeah, you're just a kid doing the best that you can. And
Trying to
like you and I are doing really good at being loving kids to and with each other.
Yeah.
Like we're just trying to heal all these little broken pieces.
Yeah.
So
and sometimes kids have meltdowns and it's okay.
yeah.
Sometimes you gotta like get it wrong. And it's okay to get it wrong. Like that perfectionism of like you have to like violence happens if you don't get it right. And that really, some people are still in that situation. But if you're not, like learning how to get it wrong and be wrong and have it be okay and mess up and have it be okay is so hard.
Back to
It's
this
such a loving thing.
like this emotional monitoring from this post. Like I cannot tell you how, because I think about this. If your partner is upset and your first instinct is to ask, are you mad at me? I don't ask that out loud.
Yeah. You just think she's mad at me, right?
Did something wrong. She's mad at me. Bam. That's the first thought. So I have to reprogram that, right?
Mm-hmm.
I have to be able to see she's upset and I can let that program run. Like that's the whole thing, I think, when it comes to rewiring those like neural pathways, as well as like fixing all the tapes that go on and on and on and on in your head ad nauseum, right? Like the idea isn't to stop those tapes and then replace them with something else. It's to let that tape play out, like not try to control it anymore. So you're upset. I'm going to hear the part of me that says, she's upset. What did I do? I did something wrong. She's mad at me. I'm going to hear that part. And then I'm going to replace it over time with, I wonder what's up, like, I wonder what's bothering her. Like she's obviously dysregulated in some way. I'm just going to love her from this place of support and curiosity of what she needs in this moment. And then slowly over time, one gets turned up more and one gets turned down.
Yes.
So the one that just needs to be replaced, just think about turning it down a little bit. So it's playing in the background. And then over time, the one that you want to replace it with gets turned up a little bit more and turned up a little bit more. Because the internal judgment that happens when we're like, oh no, I'm thinking that thought again.
Yeah.
And then I'm critical of myself instead of just like focusing on, oh yeah, that thought's going to happen. Because that's a subconscious fucking program.
Yeah. You've had that for a long time.
Kid, right? That was based on my survival. So there's a good chance I'm not turning that one off today. Right. Because a part of my brain will go, turn this off, you're dead.
Right.
Can't turn that one off, you'll die.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
The response is, go ahead, turn that one off, because then you're dead. Right?
Right.
So let's stop like criticizing ourselves and judging ourselves for not turning off something or stopping something that is directly correlated to whether or not we think we're going to live. And instead just turn it down a little bit.
Just turn it down.
And turn the other one up.
Right.
And then just slowly over time
we're all
continually
DJs.
Practicing.
Wicka.
Right? So now when you're upset, I'm just going to practice like, oh, I wonder what she needs. I wonder what she's experiencing. What can I help her with
I immediately started panicking at that. Because like when she's upset, I'm like, oh, what does she need? I'm like, oh, please, God, don't start asking me what I need for everything.
Let's see, what's the
what
question?
Do you need? What do you need?
What's the question I'm supposed to? Are you okay?
Are you okay? Now, see, here's...
What are you feeling?
Let's...
That's even better.
What are you feeling? Yes, that is better. Because I ask you if you're okay. So according to that, you always have to like adjust where you're at. What we say, if it resonates, grab it. If you have like an alteration, take it. If it doesn't resonate at all, leave it. It's not for you. But that ask, are you okay? And I'm like, ha ha ha, that's my question. I ask you, are you okay all the time and drive you nuts. Like you can't just, are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay? What's wrong? What are you feeling?
What
are
you thinking with that? Are you okay?
I think I'm like, I have pissed him off. He's not okay. Like I need to do something.
That's why it drives me nuts because I can feel underneath it. You're not asking me if I'm okay. You're asking me, are you okay?
And honestly, that is probably, gosh, I don't want it to be this much. There are times I'm like, are you okay? And it is for you. And I want to be like, that's like 90% of the time that I'm asking, are you? But it's like 20% of the time that I'm asking, are you okay? And that's like, saying that, it feels like shit.
It feels so differently when you ask from the perspective of like, oh, are you okay?
Yeah, I usually don't repeat it. Like, Are you
Yeah.
okay? Are you okay? Are you sure? Are you sure you're okay? You're like, I'm not gonna be.
5 minutes later, I'm just checking back. I just want to make sure you're okay.
Right?
Are you okay?
Yeah.
What are you feeling?
Like, am I safe? Am I safe? Do I need, like, is our child safe? Even though obviously they always are, but that's my default, is I am making sure that I am safe and the people around me are safe.
Mhm.
And like, I will also jump in with other people if I'm picking up on stuff for them and feel like I'm going to protect you. And I will get, like, I can have people in a conversation to where I trauma interact with them, right? And I get,
What do you mean?
should we get into this right now?
Yeah,
or?
I'm curious. Don't look at your watch like,
I'm like, I don't know.
podcast is
We gotta
over.
go.
We've done enough of this talking.
If I can sense essentially what my body deems as danger
Okay.
in a situation, I know how to go towards that. I know how to interact with them and to like shift the energy to where they're at. So I am literally like creating a space that is keeping those around me. I'm creating this arc that is protecting those around me by getting them to interact in a certain way and how I know that they like to talk.
Will you do that for other people?
What do you mean?
Like, because it's like I'm asking, like, are you aware of when you do this? Because obviously you'll do it for us, meaning me and the kids, right? Will you do that for other people outside of us?
It depends.
Yeah.
Yeah, it depends. There's a lot of times where I'm just listening and then I will hear stuff and I will immediately go in and start casting my
Your survival techniques.
right, my survival techniques. Like, that's what I was trained to do. It's more protecting other people than myself. Myself was
Right.
so I haven't learned out of that, and I still will do that, but not always.
Yeah.
There's a lot of times now I'm like, oh, I keep going. We're all works in progress.
There's so many things that you and I do subconsciously. Right? Do you feel like you're starting to see mine? That's, put it up over top of the mic.
I can't get on my way.
Do you feel like you are seeing some of my subconscious behaviors clearer?
I don't know what the right answer is here. I just got afraid.
The reason I asked it is because I feel like I'm seeing yours clearer.
Do you?
Clearer.
Clearer.
And I like the internal struggle for me is, do I need to articulate this one? Or is this one that is just like, obviously, eventually you'll eventually see them all anyways.
No, I love it when you point out everything with me.
Right?
Yeah.
It's super helpful.
Yes.
But if I'm seeing yours clearer, then that means that you must be seeing mine clearer.
I don't feel the need to interact quite as much with the speaking what I'm seeing with you. I do it. And that's both good and bad, because as much as I see, like, sometimes there's like, oh, I see this thing and I don't speak it. And I probably should, because there's some accountability there. And there's a really good amount of time of when I see it and don't speak it, because I'm just witnessing and you get to be on your journey and I'm on mine. And then there's also when I see it that I can be reinforcing more, not reinforcing positive behavior. That's a terrible way. I'm like, here's a treat. Like, acknowledge the positive. And I also, because I've gotten really, I feel like I've really been practicing and honing my, like, you don't have to say everything. Before it was I couldn't say anything. And then when I broke that, I said everything. And so trying to find that balance and not, I don't know what I'm saying. I'm getting lost on this. I'm trying to find the balance in the areas of where speaking to things more and less, and just being more aware of my experience of it. So do I notice more of your subconscious behaviors? Yeah. I also feel like yeah.
How can we support each other in that more? Because I want your insight.
Yeah.
Like, I trust you and what you're seeing. I didn't used to.
Yeah.
And it's not because I didn't trust you, but obviously I was coming from that perspective of like, I mean, I wasn't safe to look at any of my stuff. So by hell, I wasn't going to let you look at my stuff.
Right.
But now I'm in a space that's much different, and it's not all the time, obviously. Like there's plenty of time where I'm activated and triggered, and it's probably not a good idea to be like, I think you might be doing that. Okay. But I think that I would like us to create some sort of, you know how sometimes we'll have those fun things where we like come up with catchphrases or something like that to remind each other of something. Like, how can we help each other in this space more? Because I think the fact that we're seeing each other's subconscious shadows playing out, that's a good thing.
It is a good thing.
Right? That means that we're getting rid of some of the conscious ones and now we're working our way down into the subconscious ones. But I need help with those. I can't see them.
What if it's something that, like, if I see you working through it, I'm not going to point it out.
Yeah, that's
like
true.
You're working through it. You know, you're doing a good job. You're figuring,
and what if I'm
out.
not?
What if you're not? Well, then it definitely becomes an issue and then we end up talking about it. But a lot of times I do wait too long until it starts to, instead of bringing something,
So let's get curious about it. Maybe we're not going to come up with the answer right now. But I think that's because it just dawned on me. Like,
I'm immediately afraid of that though. Like you're saying that, I'm like, I feel like we do a really good job. And that tells me because I do a good job at bringing things to your attention and being like, hey, like this isn't okay. But just what you're saying that, I'm like, oh, you want me to go like deeper. And so that tells me I point out things that I've already deemed safe and that going like further and really like holding more accountable is...
Because I'm having this awareness right now.
I'm like, I gotta go lay in bed again all day.
I feel like I am seeing a lot of your subconscious things come out.
Okay. Are you just trying to find a safe way to start pointing out my shit?
No.
You're like, you tell me something so I can tell you everything you're doing.
No, I'm really not. I'm looking at...
Projector.
It's that cool thing that we always come back to where like... we always think the same thing. We're always like, it's that dynamic where it's like, oh, if I'm thinking this, then you must be thinking this. If I'm seeing this, then you must be seeing this. But we'll project it out onto each other rather than reflect and look internally within ourselves, right? And so like, I'm looking at this as a hack.
I
like
know.
This is a
I'm
beautiful
seeing
relationship
dice being rolled
thing.
in my hands right now. Like dice out on the table. I'm like, is it dicey?
So
is dice
really
our cold
dangerous.
word? Yeah.
It feels really dangerous.
But
to do
it's
this.
also like there's a chance of like big success, right? The dice going down, like it.
I don't think it needs to be the extreme of like gambling.
You're the one that said it's really dangerous. And I'm like, well, if we're going to see the danger, we're also going to see the possibility.
I think there's a softer way that we can look at it.
I don't know. I got to go play dice. I don't know how to play dice. Somebody needs to teach me how to play dice.
Where it can just be like, because I think I can also discern, right? I have the discernment to recognize now would be a good time to bring this up.
Yeah.
And now would not be a good time to bring this up.
Yeah. Sometimes.
I'm getting to the point, I think, in my discernment levels where I recognize this isn't a good time to bring it up. And then I still bring it up.
Oh, okay. Okay,
and
I
then
see
I'm
that.
like, what the fuck?
Why did I do that?
What weird, bizarro game am I doing to dump a bunch of dopamine or adrenaline or something into my brain?
Oh, things are a little calm. Let's charge the situation. I need a hit.
I'm like, I can see, right? It was the same thing.
I'm going to say to you, I'm going to roll the dice when that's it. That's my thing. I was like, I'm going to roll the dice.
Okay.
What do you think? And like, get your opt-in.
I think that's good.
Right?
Yeah.
And you can be like, you better not. I'm like, cool.
Well, you know what? Now's actually the time to pick up your chips and walk away from the table. Because we're not playing dice.
Those dice about to be out your nose.
We're playing that game in Alien where they use the knife to stab around the fingers. Let's see if you want to roll dice now.
I got nervous. You and violence.
So yeah, I think we can help each other in this space, right? With love.
Yeah. How does the dice phrase feel for you? Or is that just like, that's stupid? You can come up with your own phrase.
It's better when we have a same phrase.
Okay.
Because then it's more on the same page,
Well,
right?
I am not sold on dice. That's just for some reason the visual I got and it stood out because that's not a common visual for me. I'm usually not like, oh.
Let's go with it.
No.
I like it.
Okay.
We'll roll the dice
until
here.
we find something better.
I'm going to roll the dice here.
Oh, at this moment?
In this moment.
Fuck. I knew you were waiting to say something.
I'm going to roll the dice in this moment.
You were waiting.
The fact that you think it's so risky to call me out on things.
I'm starting to sweat.
right?
Yeah.
Probably means that there's something there,
Probably.
right? Something
Yeah.
to look at. Because the fact that it's so scary that you're going to risk, that it's a risk, that you're gambling,
Yeah.
that you're taking a risk by simply saying, hey, this might be some shadow of yours to look at, because I can kind of see some of your subconscious behaviors and patterns coming out from where I'm sitting here next to you from a loving place as your partner. And I'm supporting you and I'm loving you and I'm championing you in this moment. And I can see some of your unhealthy coping mechanisms and some of your unhealthy patterns and some of your unhealthy behaviors, because we've been together for so long and I love you and I see those things now. And I want to help you in your healing process. Like the fact that that is so risky for you might be something to look at.
It is definitely something to look at. So we'll practice that.
Yeah.
And it's also like, because we're not triggered in this moment. No, I'm nervous.
I know, right?
It's in a non-triggered space. It's easier to like see.
For sure.
Right. So from a non-triggered space, I'm like, yeah, that is a risky thing, because that was a absolutely fucking not thing my whole life. And then that shifted, and our relationship has its palette of colors, and there has been like, it's not always safe to bring stuff to you, but also like the level are very different. You know, safety used to mean I wasn't physically safe, and that's not a factor anymore. However, when I get nervous like that, my body still says, even though I don't have a past of physical violence that I have to overcome with you, so grateful for, like that has never been an issue. But my body has so much that I still can't not brace for that. I still can't not be afraid of that. We have like 10 years, 11 years that hasn't been an issue for me, but I have 30 before that.
Yeah.
That it very much was. So I'm still like, it is scary for me. I'm like, that is not a good idea. But I know that I can hear, even if it has a reaction from you, even if like you get really triggered and react all over the place, it's not a physical violence threat. Still, like acid is coming up in my throat right now. I'm getting panicked. I'm getting flushed. I'm like, whoa, like it's scary. And it brings all of that into this. So it's a dice, because that's what I've learned. And because it is played out in unsafe ways in our relationship, but not unsafe to like, from what my body associates. Does that make sense?
Makes total sense.
It's like so hard to try and express that and explain that. And like, I don't know, like, I think, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. I feel like the only way that you can really understand it is if you've been like physically unsafe and then you are physically safe, because you're still unpacking those. So even though it doesn't fit the situation and there's a good history of it not fitting the situation, it still is a part of me, and I don't know how to unravel it out of my bones yet. I'm still like,
yeah, that's the process.
Nervous, right? So the dice isn't all you.
I think
but some.
I think your inspiration to use this little catchphrase as a way to like remind each other is perfect.
Did I breathe? Yeah.
I think it's perfect because it's like having twofold reaction here, where we get to use it as this catchphrase, and it gets to be the thing that helps you titrate off some of that energy of like, oh my gosh, this is risky, and realize it's not. It's okay. It's okay. Because there's going to be way more times that you roll the dice with me, and I'm going to be like, thank you so much.
Right.
Thank you so much for bringing, oh my gosh, I can't believe I didn't see it. I totally see that one. As opposed to like the negative reaction of me getting frustrated and upset, and then like starting to deflect everything back to you and be like, oh, you want to call me out? Well, what about you? Right about this? All the other stuff, right? So I think it's a good little phrase that we can use, and I'm glad that you thought of it.
Yeah. Do you like, I don't know, Yeah.
Do I what?
I hope. Well, I feel like part of me feels kind of guilty, right? I think I'm more triggered here than I realized because I'm like, that's not a fair catchphrase for you. You didn't like that one. You didn't want to use that. We need to come up with something for you. I don't need that one. Let me sit here and caretake. Let me trauma caretake you right now to make sure I'm safe because I'm fucking scared. So I'm going to make sure that you're okay because I'm scared.
Are you emotionally monitoring me?
I am. So I'm not only emotionally monitoring you, I'm trying to emotionally handle you.
Are you asking, are you mad at me?
I'm not asking it, but I'm like, this is a problem. I started a fight and I've got to fix this.
Yeah, everything's okay.
Yeah.
Everything's totally okay. And I think it's a good catchphrase.
Sometimes I get to come up with them.
You come up with them a lot.
I know. That was for me.
Okay. Good.
Like, it's okay if you came up with it. It's okay if that was your phrase. That's okay if that was your visual.
Yes.
That's okay.
It's very okay.
Yeah.
I'm glad we touched base on last week's episode.
Right.
I'm glad we did this. That was kind of like our scary thing when we were getting ready to release last week's episode. We're like, you know what? And then we'll just touch base on it next week.
Let's touch base.
I'm glad we did it. Feels like a good little completion of the experience to have the episode released and then come back to it a week later. And obviously we've done some healing in the meantime. We're able to kind of sit in this space. So good job, babe.
Good job, Craig.
Let's move on.
Okay.
To the final, not the final. What is we're going to eventually come up with something that like, this is the segment. I always forget that word segment. This is the segment of the podcast, or this part of the podcast is the segment where we answer questions. And you can submit those questions anytime by emailing us at info@energyislove.love. Or you can message us those questions on social media, wherever you follow us. What? I'm
out of water. My mouth is dry. I'm hot. I'm like flashing or something over here. I need some Tums. And like, woo, my body is physically responding.
Yeah. Because like, we brought up the triggers from last week.
Like, let's get this question because I got to go. I got to Kool-Aid man it through the door.
Gotta get the fuck out of here.
Right?
So this question this week is, me and my partner are happy and in love, but we're constantly disagreeing with each other and fighting. And we can't seem to agree on anything. Help. It's great. And you're coming to us.
Right?
So clearly we know what we're doing.
We know what we're doing. Okay, let's roll the dice.
You're just going to use it for everything.
Yeah, it's my new kid Steph's catchphrase. No.
I love it. So this is super common, obviously, right? Mm-hmm. Disagreeing and like the back and forth of never agreeing on the same thing and always kind of being at odds with each other, even though you're in a relationship and you love each other. And I think that's super common.
Yeah.
We do it all the time still, and we kind of get stuck in that loop. I think it comes from this perspective of being a little kid and feeling like you were never seen, never heard, never valued. What you thought, what you felt, all of those things being kind of disregarded. And then as you grow up, you need to continually fight to be seen and heard and validated. And then that plays out in your relationship with always needing to be right.
Yeah.
Always needing your partner to see you and see that you're right and see that you're worthy and see that what you have to bring to the table. And so that becomes the battle that the both of you are stuck in, where you're trying to get the other person to see you, to see your worth, to see your value, which that's the way that we are loved, right? You have to be seen in order to be loved. So I'm going to fight to be seen, and I'm going to fight to show you that I'm worthy of your love by proving that I'm right about everything. And it's a really chaotic, toxic loop that can kind of spiral and ruin relationships, where you can eventually see relationships break down because each partner is constantly trying to be right, as opposed to recognizing at some point, hopefully, what, babe? That they're both right.
They're both right. And
like, that's such a trippy thing to think about.
The fact is that there is very little that you actually have to come to the same agreement on.
Yeah.
There are a few things in a relationship where you absolutely like need an agreement on, but most of it, you don't have to be in agreement on.
You get to be on the same page.
Right? You get to have your opinions and perspectives, each of you, and you're both right.
Yes.
Like very little actually causes a destruction when you don't agree on it, except for when you make it.
Right. Except for when you're willing to, or when you're unwilling to acknowledge that you can both be right.
Right.
And it's a hard concept to grasp at first. Like it takes a while.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, I mean, really it's the beginning of like awareness that everybody has a perspective. Everybody has
an experience
that they've lived that
Mm-hmm.
shapes their perspective and shapes how they see the world and how they feel about things. And your partner is the same. So when you can start to see that and have compassion for it, then that's like when the door opens up into all sorts of other wonderful, beautiful, amazing things, because you start to have compassion for that person, for your partner, of what is their experience really like.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I get to get curious about why do they actually think that, you know, this is the right way to do something, rather than judge it as the wrong way. And now I need to prove it. Look, I'm really curious. Why do you feel that way? Why are you so passionate about this? I'm curious
like,
about that.
What does it feel like for you? What is it bringing up in you?
Yeah.
Like, let's hear this. I want to understand.
Exactly.
Like, I want to understand.
Like, I agree that that's totally right.
Right.
You know, you see it that way. That's awesome. I don't see it that way, but I'll explain myself, but I'm curious. You know, why do you see it that way? Why do you feel that way about whatever this disagreement is about? And then just getting really open to hearing what that is. And not like, don't hear it so that you can pick it apart and argue about it.
Right.
Sure, you're right.
Yeah. Okay.
You're totally right.
Yeah.
Tell me why you're right.
Again.
And then the whole time you're like, wrong.
Right. That's not.
Wrong. And then let me explain to you why you're wrong.
Right.
I just heard why you think you're right, but let me tell you why you're wrong. Right. That's a thing that often happens. And we still do that sometimes too. But you just have to listen with compassion and hear their version of life.
And that also doesn't mean that you have to then agree with them.
Exactly.
Like being open to that is like still being open to yourself, being open to changing your perspective and allowing your perspective to change. But like they get to have their perspective and you still get to have yours. And it's not a agree to disagree, like you said. It's just like, oh, that's what it feels like for you. That's your perspective. And that is absolutely true.
Yeah.
My perspective is this. And that is absolutely true.
Yeah. It feels so differently when you start doing it. It's hard at first. And then it just becomes this beautiful thing of like, oh, suddenly we're not fighting anymore. We're just learning about each other.
Yeah.
Like, what does your life look like from over there? You know, if I was in your eyes looking out, what's it going to feel like? What's it going to look like? And it becomes this really beautiful opportunity to connect rather than the disconnect that happens when you're trying to constantly prove to each other that you're right.
Right.
All of that, like continual back and forth fighting and arguing, even when it's playful. You know what I mean?
those sly, like, haha.
Yeah. And that's oftentimes, I think, how it starts. And then it just like metastasizes. Maybe that's not the right word, but it just...
No, I think that's actually probably a pretty accurate word for how toxic it can get.
Over time, it just starts to build into this toxicity in your relationship that is so destructive. So you can stop it. You know, you can consciously stop it by just getting curious about what is their life like through their lenses, through their perspective, and like coming to the and maybe because you said earlier that like there are a few things that you have to agree upon. Maybe this is one of them. Like you have to agree that you're both right.
That you're both right.
You have to agree that both of your views and your perspectives and your thoughts matter and that they're both valuable. If you can't agree that they're both right, at least agree that they're both valuable.
They're both valuable. There you go.
Right.
And that they're true to the other person.
Yeah,
whether or not they're true to you, they're true to the other person.
Right.
Yeah.
And so if you can respect that and then just get curious about that, eventually you'll probably get to the point where you're like, oh, they're right. They're just right from their perspective and I'm right from mine.
Right. So. I also want to bring just like attention just a little bit more, even though this wasn't in the question, I feel like it's important and I just want to throw it out there that like really emphasizing on the fact that both perspectives. And that means that if you are in a dynamic where somebody is like demanding that they're always right, but you are always like, oh, you are right and I am wrong, and not trusting yourself, and never like if the other person is always right in your mind as well, like we got to look at that. There's some unhealthy things there too. And so when we're talking about both perspectives being right and true and accurate for that person, we are talking about it coming from a healthy place.
Right.
But if they're like, I'm always right and you're always wrong, not with those words, but for like that manipulation, they can come in. That's another topic to look at. Your perspective is right, even if they don't agree with it.
Mm-hmm.
So really, like, trusting yourself, but not demanding that your truth be forced on anybody else.
Yeah. It gets to just be yours.
Yeah.
And your partner gets to have theirs.
Yeah.
So thank you for the question.
Thank you.
You can always submit those. You can be anonymous too. Like, you can ask us literally anything. Some of them we don't answer. We had one that we decided not to talk about on the podcast.
Right? We're like, that's a good question.
Yeah, great question. We're going to Google
Right?
that, but we're not going to talk about it. So you can send those questions to us anytime. Like I said, you can email them to info@energyislove.love or just hit us up on social media and send them to us via Messenger.
If we don't get to it this week, it might be your question next week. So
yeah,
like,
don't hesitate.
yeah.
And again, come join us on the online community. Yes. You can find that offering at our website.
You're invited.
It's energyislove.love. And lastly, if you like this podcast and if you're a fan of the podcast, do us a huge favor and go not just subscribe to it wherever you're listening, but click the subscribe button.
Follow.
And then,
I don't know. Click all the things. Do all the things.
Yeah, click all the things and then leave a review.
Yeah.
And that is going to help the podcast grow and expand. We're coming up on what year is this? 2023. It's 7 years of the podcast. This is episode 350, and we're not going anywhere anytime soon. So any little bit of help helps, and we appreciate it greatly, and we're deeply grateful.
We're grateful.
How we're going to say grateful from now on. Thank you, everybody, and we'll see you next week.